Hello and welcome to Fast Horses Today for Saturday. Today is January 31st, and we're going to cover some of the races over at Santa Anita. Now, I expect Santa Anita to probably have some big handle and some big pulls. Several of the major racetracks are not going to be going today due to weather. A lot of bad weather in and around the United States, especially towards the south and the east. So Santa Anita, is one of the few places that we are expecting some consistent and nice weather there. So be that as it may, that'll be one of the signals that people around the country probably will be betting. So we'll probably see some inflated pools, some nice betting opportunities for the Saturday card. So let's get started over at Santa Anita. Their first race does start about 12:30 Pacific time, so that's 2:30 here in the Central Time Zone. I'm going to skip over the first few races, including that what would be their feature race. That would be the San Pasqual Grade 2, mile and an eighth on the dirt. Good luck to all those in that field. But we're going to move on to the fifth race. I do like the late pick 5 today. Late pick 5, I think, is going to pay nicely. As I mentioned, I think there's going to be some nice pulls at Santa Anita, due to the fact that there are a limited number of signals around the country because of the weather. So I think there'll be a nice pick 5 pull there. So the fifth race does start out about 2:39 Pacific time, so that's 4:39 here in the Central Time Zone. They're going to be going a mile on the grass. These are first level allowance horses, and these are California breds. Fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up. I've got 4 horses here. I think it's a pretty tough field and a pretty open race. I'm going to put 4 horses in here. I feel like one of these 4 will get this pick 5 started. We're going to go with the 2, Just a Kiss. Just a Kiss for the Andy Mathis barn. Armando Ayuso takes the call. Now, Ayuso has ridden this horse twice in her two starts in her lifetime. They started out at Santa Anita back in the late spring, ran one of those flat grass sprints, which was just pretty much a nice even race. What really was nice is this horse ended up going a mile and a 16th at Del Mar. So, quite a test going the first time 2 turns, and she passed with flying colors. So, she won the race really nicely in a 2-turn race. It's always something to, really to take notice is when horses can do that. Now, Just a Kiss, something apparently went amiss after that August 15th race. We haven't seen her since. She was scheduled to go in a race on January 2nd. There was a turf race scheduled that day. They had some weather, so they took that race off. So they scratched her out of that race. Now, I'm going to look at the silver lining there and say that, the Andy Mathis barn wants to keep this girl on the grass, so they didn't want to even fool around and bother running her there. So they did scratch her out of that race. So, it looks like she has been ready to run for a little while now. She shows some nice works. 5-1. I think Just a Kiss will be live in this race here. Going to put the 3 horse, who was Lady Mendelson. Lady Mendelson for the Carla Gaines barn. Couple changes here. Carla Gaines is going to be taking the blinkers off this horse here. Now, Carla Gaines is certainly a very capable trainer, has won a lot of races there in Southern California over the years. She started out a little slow here at Santa Anita, so it's probably time to pick it up. But, here's what I like. They're taking the blinkers off. Lady Mendelson, she won a race at Santa Anita at a mile race on the grass without blinkers. She's worn blinkers in her last several starts, so, maybe they've noticed something that maybe this horse, takes some of the edge off or so, and they're taking them off her. Shows some nice works. She's been in and around this company. She has done, some good work on turf and dirt, so she's won at this level, so she's able to qualify because her first level allowance win was on the dirt. So they're going turf here. She looks to be fine on turf, so I think she'll be competitive here at 6-1 with Diego Herrera on board. So we'll put the 3 Lady Mendelson. Going to put the 4 horse, who is She's a Joker. She's a Joker for the Peter Miller barn. Peter Miller legs up Ismael Jaramillo. Now Jaramillo certainly is, very, very, good here with these riders here in Southern California. Has really, kind of carved out his niche, done well here. So She's a Joker, 4-1 here. Now she's also been running, in and around this level. She's actually run with Better several times, running with Open Company. She does have a good turf record at Santa Anita. So I think, this is one of those where maybe some of her back class and experience could really, help her here in this kind of race. And also the addition of Jaramillo certainly doesn't hurt. Not the biggest Peter Miller fan, but, does get horses. He does get winners. So She's a Joker, could be dangerous here, probably get a nice position, could finish up strongly here at 4-1. Then finally going to put the 5 horse, who probably will be your favorite, that being Maya Kama. Maya Kama for the Jeff Mullins barn. Jeff Mullins puts up Juan Hernandez on the horse here. Now, these guys have certainly done some nice work together. Hernandez has ridden this horse in her last, many starts, including 3 of her wins. So, she certainly merits the favoritism here at 5-2. She's done well, on the turf. She has 2 starts at Santa Anita on the grass. She's had 2 seconds. So, we're not going to hold that against her. She certainly has done well on the turf, having, one of her wins on the turf, the other couple at, in the dirt ranks there. So she certainly, as I mentioned, merits the favoritism here. She's pretty sharp lately, and running a mile on the turf over at Santa Anita should be no problem for this one. So we'll put Maya Calm in here. So we've got the 2, 3, 4, and 5 to start out the pick 5 in the 5th race. All right, now let's move over to the 6th race of the day. 6th race is a 6 furlong dirt sprint. These are maiden special weights, and these are 3-year-olds. So, there's some very big purchase prices here. So, these are some horses maybe got a little late start. I don't know if we'll see any 3-year-old stars out of this this cast of, characters here. As I mentioned, certainly some big purchase prices, so, maybe we do see some future stars here. I'm going to make it really simple. I'm going to put the 3 Bob Bafferts in this race. Baffert just seems to really hold the cards and really just hold a strong hand in these type of races. He gets the best stock, the most, expensive stock, and certainly knows what to do with them. So I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to put all 3 Bafferts in here. I'm going to go with the 1 who is Duntov. Baffert legs up Ismail Jaramillo. Now, this is a new pairing. I don't think I've seen Jaramillo riding for Bob Baffert, but, certainly a good call from the Baffert barn. Works are good. And if you look at these works, looks like these 3 Baffert horses have all worked with each other at some point. And that's pretty common in the Baffert barn. They work their horses in groups, and they work, it's just kind of like, if you think of it as like a football team, when teams are really good and they're practicing against each other, the offense and defense, they just make themselves that much better when they're going up against, their own and practicing. So I kind of look the same way with the Baffert barn, as he's got, a lot of good horses in his barn, and they practice together, they train together. It probably makes them all better. So Duntov, good works, 9-2. Jaramillo on the horse. We'll see if he gets this horse out there and goes. Certainly, I'm sure he'd, love to win for the Baffert barn and get in there. We're going to put the 3 horse who is Crude Velocity, Juan Hernandez here. Certainly some fast works here. When you see the, 59s from the gate, those are always live from the Baffert barn. This horse is 5-2. I don't know if he'll go off as a favorite, but certainly, worthwhile here in this 6 furlong sprint. And then finally going to put the 7 horse, who is Potente. Potente gets the services of Kazushi Kimura. Now, Kimura's ridden a little bit for the Baffert barn and done some good work here. Now, this is a huge purchase horse here, $2.4 million purchase horse. Horse by Into Mischief out of Sweet Sting. Now, Sweet Sting certainly has some pedigree there. She is a descendant of Perfect Sting. If you remember from Breeders' Cup days, way back when, Perfect Sting was a very nice performer. So this horse, big purchase price, certainly has had some really fast works, and has worked with a couple of these, and who knows how many other Baffert monsters Potente worked with. But 7-2 Kimura. I like the outside post. Maybe let them work inside of you there, and maybe type of stalk and pounce type of thing. So we're going to put all 3 of the Baffert horses, being the 1, 3, and the 7, in the 6th race. All right, now let's move over to the 7th race of the day. 7th race would be the co-feature. This is the Grade 3 Megahertz, running at a mile on the grass. And if you remember Megahertz, she was a really, really nice horse who ran in California probably, I'd have to say, probably about 20 years ago or so. Megahertz was a really little horse, but she just had a lot of heart and a lot of really, strong ability. Used to come storming in the stretch. So nice to see a race here named for Megahertz. She was a really nice performer. So this is a Grade 3. It's a $100,000 race. Fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up, and they're going on the grass. I've got 2 horses here that I'm going to put in. I feel like one of these 2 should advance the ticket and get it advanced there. I'm going to go with the 3 horse was Princessa Moche. Princessa Moche for the Doug O'Neill barn. Doug O'Neill legs up Mirko de Moro. Now, de Moro's had this horse in her last 3 starts, and she's done really well. So I don't know if it was de Moro who found the keys here, but she's run some really nice races in her last 3. She took on first level allowance horses, ran down the hill at Santa Anita, took care of the business there in a really nice race. They extended her to a mile at Del Mar in a second level allowance race. took care of the business there. So she passed that 2-turn test, which is always, as I mentioned, really impressive when a horse can pass their 2-turn test with a win. So they followed that up with a stakes try there. She ran into Las Ciénegas, another grade 3 there, and she almost won the race. She got beat by a monster in Queen Maxima. Certainly no shame in losing to Queen Maxima. Queen Maxima's beaten a lot of horses around Southern California and around the country. Queen Maxima is a really, really nice horse. So, we're going to see if, Princesa Moche certainly has done well down the hill. Usually those down the hill horses, they'll go 2 turns, and Princesa Moche certainly has done that. So we'll see if she can do that in stakes company. She's 5-1. I expect a really nice effort. The Doug O'Neill barn's been going really well. I don't know if they're going to put her on the lead and catch me if you can, or what they're going to do. We'll leave it up to the connections. They know what to do. So I think Princesa Moche certainly going to be tough here in this grade 3 megahertz. And I'm also going to put the 4 horse, who is Will Then. Will Then comes in for the Jonathan Thomas barn, Augustin Stables. Always a nice thing to see them, running their horses in Southern California. Now, Thomas puts Mike Smith on the horse. Now, Mike Smith, has ridden this horse before, and I'm just wondering, it just would seem to me that, Mike Smith, is going to get more opportunities, on turf or on, in races in general, that if he chooses to do so. There's several jocks out in the Southern California jock colony. Antonio Frasu had gotten hurt early on. Rispoli got hurt last week. Flavian Pratt is not a regular there in California anymore. So, that opens up a lot of opportunities. And, Jonathan Thomas, he's certainly a really good trainer. He's done some really good work since he's brought horses to California, a few years back. And, it's been my theory about Mike Smith at this point in his career. He's in the twilight of his career, let's face it. He's done some wonderful work over the decades, Hall of Fame rider. But I think nowadays, Mike Smith would probably be most effective on turf, going 2 turns. You kind of let the horse do the work and you finish up. You stay out of the horse's way. So it's really, just kind of a strategic type of deal. And, a strategy that I think would work for a rider like Mike Smith. So 4-1 on Will Then. She's certainly done some nice work. She ran a really nice race in the Grade 1 American Oaks on opening day. Now, Flavian Pratt had her that day, and we all know Pratt makes a difference, but she ran a really nice race there in the Grade 1 American Oaks at 1.25 miles. She's shown a really nice record at 1 mile, so I think the mile here should be right up her alley. I don't even know if she wants to run longer than 1 mile, but Thomas has her in this mile race. She's a stakes winner at 1 mile. She's also stakes winner at Santa Anita at 1 mile. So I think Will Then's going to be really tough. We'll see what Mike Smith can do here. I think it's a good test and something to look forward to see, about playing Mike Smith horses during this meeting here with the lack of some of the jockeys here. So we've got the 3 and the 4 in the grade 3 megahertz, and that being the 7th race. All right, now let's move over to the 8th race of the day. 8th race is a first level allowance race. They're going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. First level open company. There's also an option to claim for $50,000. So that opens up for horses that have won at this level. They're putting horses in, some old timers, some horses who have been through the battles. That's a horse like Red Flag, certainly has done some really nice work, has won it, in Southern California several times as they took this horse around the country as well. He's in this race for $50,000, so that, gives him a chance to run here. So you kind of make a comparison if you want to go with, a woolly veteran like a Red Flag, or you want to go with a new face, horses like maybe March of Time, 3 starts, high purchase price here, or who I'm going to end up singling. Another one fits that new type horses, Cornucopian. Cornucopian comes in for Bob Baffert. I feel like Baffert has a really strong hand today. Bob Baffert has a strong hand a lot of times in the Southern California race cards. So Cornucopian is 6-5 in the program. Now, Cornucopian was scheduled to run in the Grade 1 Malibu on opening day. So I'm not exactly sure what happened. They scratched a horse out of that race. Not sure. The horse has trained really well since then. A couple changes here with Cornucopian. They're taking blinkers off Cornucopian from, he's had 3 starts in his career. They're taking blinkers off. My guess is they just want to maybe take the edge off this guy. He's really been speedy in his races that he's run in his 3-race career. Juan Hernandez gets the call. Now, Hernandez has not been on this horse, on race days. I'm going to guess he's probably worked this horse out. This is a very nice horse, and this probably is one of Bob Baffert's, bigger stars in the stable, I'm guessing. If this horse goes well in this race, I think you'll see some big things from Cornucopian. Now, this horse, if you remember last year, this horse ran off the screen in his first start over at Oaklawn. Ran a huge race, huge speed figure. Horse that ran second to him ended up coming back to win. It was a live race. This horse just was just a complete monster in first out. They thought so much of this horse, they ended up putting this horse in from a 6-furlong sprint into the Arkansas Derby. And, the horse ended up breaking really, really sharp. And it was almost like John Velasquez, who rode Cornucopian that day, really couldn't control the horse. So he just had to let this horse go. And this horse really blazed over there at Oaklawn. And ended up finishing fourth, which really wasn't a bad finish if you think about it, going 1 1/8 miles the way this horse ran off, in the beginning stages. So, was a favorite that day. I think they had Derby dreams, last spring, but, it didn't work out there. They followed that up with a race in Aqueduct and a 1-turn mile. The horse ran, just a nice race there. It was a small field. I don't know if that was a prep for something else. I'm not exactly sure, but something obviously went amiss with Cornucopian because we hadn't seen that horse since April 27th. And I know, like I said, they were going to run this horse in the Grade 1 Malibu. He got scratched. I think there's a nice spot for this guy. We see Baffert bringing horses off layoffs. That's no problem for this barn. And I just think this is something that you should see a nice race here from Cornucopia. And as I mentioned, 6-5. We're going to single him and move on here to the last race of the day. So the final leg of the Pick 5 is the 9th race. It's a 6.5 furlong turf sprint. That's the flat grass course there, the 6.5 furlong flat grass. These are fillies and mares made in special weights, and these are 3-year-olds. So maybe we'll see some nice performers, some future stars out of this race, being a 3-year-old only race. I find it to be very tough and wide open. I'm going to put 6 horses in this race. Hoping we've got a live ticket. We've got 6 horses in coverage, have nice coverage there and hit this Pick 5. So I'm going to put the 1 horse who is Silky Save. Silky Save from the Phil D'Amato barn. D'Amato legs up Jaramillo. So, these trainers are figuring out that Ismael can really ride, and you'll see him in many different barns now. So, this horse has had 3 starts over in Europe back in the fall. Summer and fall. We haven't seen this horse since then. This is a usual move for D'Amato. He brings a lot of horses in from Europe, and he does great work with them over the years. So 4-1, Silky Savai certainly could get it done. First time off the boat. Going to put the 2 horse who is Novita Dominga. Novita Dominga, very nicely bred here. This horse is out of the John Sadler barn, and by Not This Time, and we've seen Not This Time, produce some really, really exceptional horses, on all the different surfaces. Doesn't matter. Not This Time horses really run. So this is a first-timer by Not This Time out of a Ghost Zapper mare. And it looks like a homebred for the Donna Umberto stable. Sadler certainly can get him ready off the bench. First time out. 8-1, Hector Barrios. Could be go time for Novita Domingo. We'll put her in there. Going to put the 4 horse in who is Acoustic Kitty. Also for the John Sadler barn, as we mentioned. John Sadler, good with the first-timers. Kyle Frey on the horse here. Horse has had some decent works. Kyle Frey, certainly a speed rider. Maybe he gets this horse out there and goes, with this 6.5 furlong sprint. 12-1, we'll take a shot with this one. Going to put the 6 horse with Little Opal. Little Opal for the Doug O'Neill barn. Very nicely bred horse here for Doug O'Neill, and, certainly bred for turf sprints. Being by Caravaggio out of an elusive quality mare. Turf sprints, certainly, in the cards there. Mike Smith gets the horse here. So, I really don't recall Mike Smith riding a lot for Doug O'Neill. But again, as we talked about, there'll be opportunities there. And especially, I think on the turf, Mike Smith will be really effective. 10-1 on Little Opal. Got to put in the Doug O'Neill because he's been hot as can be. Certainly can get a horse first time out. I'm going to put what's probably going to be the favorite in Counterbalance. Counterbalance comes from the Michael McCarthy barn. Kazushi Kimura on this horse. This horse has had 3 starts. Very nicely bred horse here, by Caravaggio out of a mare Out of Balance. And Out of Balance was by Balance. So there was a relation there to Zenyatta. Balance and Zenyatta were half-sisters, I believe. So Counterbalance has run some nice races. She started her career on the dirt at Del Mar in the summer, ran up against Lawali. Lawali was a nice horse. She ran in some of those graded stakes in the 2-year-old ranks. And then, they moved this horse over to the turf, and she's run some nice races on the turf. So we'll see, a little bit of a break. Mike McCarthy has given this horse. Kimura still, stays with the horse, 7-2. Counterbalance will put in. And then finally we'll put the 12 horse, who is Lirios. Lirios for the Richard Mandella barn. Lirios gets Marco DeMuro. Marco DeMuro certainly has ridden well for the Mandella barn. Mandella, is, I think, the reason why Marco DeMuro came to the United States. They've got a relationship there. This horse has had one start. Ran back in the fall at Del Mar in a dirt sprint. Just kind of an even race. I don't know. I don't really... you really can't indict Mandella horses first time out. A lot of times they're not ready to win. Mandella horses usually need starts, so I think that the benefit of a start could help there. This horse certainly, very well bred by Into Mischief out of Paris Lights. I know there's some nice performers out of Paris Lights. There's some siblings here that are pretty good. So 20-1, we'll take a shot with Lirios. I mean, you see it happen a lot in that last race of the day at Santa Anita. Chaos happens, a big price comes. Let's hope we have a live ticket and a horse like Lirios comes storming down the stretch. So in the last leg, we've got 1, 2, 4, 6, 11, 12. All right, now let's recap the day and recap the bets. Okay, so for Saturday, January 31st, we've got a late pick 5 over at Santa Anita, which does start in the 5th race. So in the 5th race, we're going to go with the 2, 3, 4, 5, with the 1, 3, 7, with the 3, 4, with the single of Cornucopia, and that's the 5 horse, with the 1, 2, 4, 6, 11, 12 in that last race. Now today, that pick 5 ticket will cost $72. Now I feel it's worth it. I do like Cornucopia. I think we're going to see a nice effort out of him. So instead of making a win bet on a horse like that, we'll try a pick 5, see if we can get some prices. So $72, if you want to add or subtract to that, do what works out for you. If you want to bet the pick 3s, pick 4, whatever works for you, I wish you the best of luck. Let's wish the folks over at Santa Anita a very safe day of racing today. Let's wish ourselves some good luck and some good trips. We know that's a big difference in winning and losing. So thank you so much for watching Fast Horses today and listening to the picks. Thanks to everybody who's hit the subscribe button. I really appreciate everyone. We've gotten some added viewership. Thank you very much for that. You can always like, dislike, make comments, make good comments, make bad comments. I promise to respond to everything. Let's try and get this pick 5 going here at Santa Anita on Saturday. We'll be back for more coverage tomorrow at the Great Race Place. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.